I was folding towels in my bedroom when I heard it. My daughter-in-law's voice carried from the kitchen, light and amused, talking to someone on speakerphone. Oh, you know how it is with older folks. She probably doesn't even realize she does it. Yesterday she was talking to herself again about those old photo albums. It's kind of sad, really. My hand stopped mid-fold. Photo albums. I'd been alone in this room yesterday afternoon. Completely alone. Looking through my late husband's albums, whispering to his pictures like I'd done 100 times since he passed. Private moments. Grief moments. Mine. How did she know that? I set the towel down carefully, my heart starting to hammer in that slow, sick way that comes before you understand something terrible. She laughed on the phone, and I heard my son's voice in the background, low and uncomfortable, saying something I couldn't make out. I walked to my doorway. She glanced up, still smiling. "Oh, Mom's up," she said brightly into the phone. "I should go." "Yeah, she's fine. Just, at that age, things get confusing. At that age." She ended the call and turned to me with that concerned expression she'd perfected. "Did you need something?" "I was just telling my sister how we're keeping an eye on you. It's important, with memory issues." "I don't have memory issues." "Of course not," she said, her voice dripping with patience. "But you do talk to yourself a lot. It's totally normal. My grandmother did the same thing." My son appeared in the doorway behind her, coffee mug in hand, eyes fixed somewhere near the floor. "I was alone yesterday," I said quietly. "Exactly," she replied, as if I'd just proven her point. "That's why we worry." She patted my arm and walked past me toward the laundry room, already moving on. My son followed her without a word, and I stood there in the hallway feeling something I hadn't felt since. I was a teenager being gaslit by my own mother. Small, foolish, confused. But I wasn't confused. I went back to my room and closed the door. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from clarity. I looked around slowly, methodically, the way you look at a space when you suspect it's been violated. The dresser, the nightstand, the bookshelf. Then I saw it. Behind my husband's old reading chair, tucked against the baseboard near the outlet, a small black object, rectangular, no bigger than a USB drive. A thin cord ran to the wall, barely visible against the trim. I crouched down, my knees protesting, and stared at it. It wasn't mine. It wasn't dust or a forgotten charger. It was deliberate, hidden, plugged in. My first instinct was to rip it out, to march into the kitchen and slam it on the counter and demand an explanation, to scream. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way my son had avoided my eyes. Maybe it was the careful tone my daughter-in-law had used, like she was narrating my decline to an invisible audience. Maybe it was the word memory issues still echoing in my head. She wanted me to seem confused, so I didn't touch it. Instead, I pulled out my phone, the same phone she'd helped me upgrade last month, the one she insisted on setting up for me, and took a picture. I made sure the timestamp showed. I made sure the outlet and the baseboard were visible. Then I stood up, smoothed my sweater, and walked to my desk. I opened the drawer where I keep my bank statements. The joint account we'd opened to make things easier after my husband died. The account my daughter-in-law had suggested. The one she had access to. I pulled the most recent statement and looked at it. Really looked at it. 3 withdrawals I didn't make. Small ones. 200 here, 300 there. Amounts I might not notice. Amounts someone might assume I'd forget. I folded the statement carefully and slipped it into my purse. Then I walked to the bank branch 2 blocks away, the one near the grocery store, and asked them to print a full transaction history for the past 6 months. The teller smiled kindly at me. "Of course, Mrs. Patterson. Is everything all right?" "Just organizing things," I said. When I got home, my daughter-in-law was in the living room, scrolling on her phone. "Did you go out?" she asked, not looking up. Just a walk. You should tell us before you leave. We worry. I nodded and went to my room. That evening, at dinner, she mentioned something I'd done that afternoon. Something I'd done alone. In my room, with the door closed. You were rearranging your closet today, weren't you? I could hear you moving things around. Be careful with that step stool, okay? At your age, a fall could be serious. My son nodded in agreement, still not meeting my eyes. I smiled and said I'd be careful. But inside, I was making a list. And I was starting to wonder, what else has she been watching? I woke up the next morning with a plan. Not the kind of plan where you confront someone at breakfast and demand answers. That's what she expected. That's what would make me look exactly like the confused, paranoid old woman she was painting me as. No, my plan was simpler. I was going to act the part. At breakfast, I asked my son how to send a text message. He looked up from his coffee, surprised. Mom, you know how to text? I know, I said, waving my hand vaguely. But I keep forgetting where the photos go. Do they save automatically or? My daughter-in-law's face lit up with concern. Here, let me show you again. She took my phone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Too quickly, like she'd done it before. There, she said, handing it back. Just like last time. Last time. When had there been a last time? I thanked her and made a show of trying to follow her instructions, squinting at the screen, holding the phone too close to my face. She exchanged a glance with my son. That look. The one that said, "See?" It made my stomach turn, but I kept my face pleasant and confused. For the next few days, I leaned into it. I asked questions I already knew the answers to. I forgot where I'd put my reading glasses, even though they were right on the counter where I'd left them. I let her explain the TV remote twice. And I watched the way she relaxed around me, the way her comments became bolder, more specific. She mentioned that I'd been up late reading. She knew I'd reorganized the linen closet. She commented on the fact that I'd skipped lunch yesterday. Small things. Things you could explain away as observation. Except I'd done all of those things alone. Behind closed doors. You really should eat more regularly, she said one afternoon, her voice full of fake concern. At your age, skipping meals can cause lightheadedness, confusion. There was that word again. Confusion. You're right, I said softly. I don't know what I was thinking. She smiled and patted my hand. That same day, she brought up my finances. We were sitting in the living room, and she pulled out a folder I'd never seen before. I've been thinking, she said, settling onto the couch beside me. Your accounts are getting complicated. Multiple statements, different passwords, all those notifications. It must be overwhelming. It's fine, I said. I know you think it's fine, she replied, her tone gentle but firm. But I've been helping you for months now, and I've noticed you getting confused about what's where. What if we simplified things? Put everything in one place. She slid some papers across the coffee table. Pre-printed forms. Signature lines already highlighted. It's just a consolidation, she said. Everything stays in your name, of course. But it would make things so much easier for you to manage. And if something happened, if you got sick or had an emergency, we'd be able to help you without any delays. I looked at the papers. They were very official, very detailed, very much designed to look like they were in my best interest. I'll think about it, I said. Her smile tightened. Just a fraction, of course. But don't wait too long. These things are easier to handle before they become urgent. Before they become urgent. What did that mean? Later that afternoon, I made a phone call. I dialed the Social Security office, deliberately loud enough that she could hear me from the kitchen. I put on my most confused voice, asking about survivor benefits and Medicare coverage, and whether my late husband's pension was still being deposited correctly. I watched her appear in the doorway, phone in hand, listening. When I hung up, She asked casually, "Everything okay with your benefits?" "Oh, yes," I said. "Just checking. I get so mixed up with all the numbers." She nodded, satisfied. But that night, I got an email alert. Someone had tried to access my bank account online. The attempt had been blocked because the password was incorrect. The timestamp showed it had happened at 6:47 p.m. I'd been in my room at 6:47 p.m., door closed, alone. My daughter-in-law had been in the hallway around that time. I'd heard her footsteps. I'd heard her pause outside my door. And then I remembered the outlet near my door? The Ring camera she'd installed in the hallway last month? The one she said was for security. The one that pointed directly at my bedroom entrance. I sat on the edge of my bed, the email still glowing on my phone screen, and felt the full weight of what was happening settle over me. This wasn't just snooping. This wasn't just invasion of privacy. She was building something, a narrative, a case. She was making me look incompetent. And once I looked incompetent enough, those papers she'd laid out on the coffee table wouldn't be a suggestion anymore. They'd be a necessity. I printed the email at the library the next morning. I added it to the folder I was keeping hidden in my car, along with the bank statements and the photo of the device behind my chair. When I got home, my daughter-in-law was waiting. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice light but her eyes sharp. "Just the library." "The library!" She laughed softly. "Mom, you could have asked me to get you a book. You don't need to be driving all over town at your age." "At your age?" I smiled and said I'd just needed the air. But as I walked past her, I saw it. Her hand, resting on the wall near the outlet in the hallway, right where the Ring camera was plugged in. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. She wasn't just watching me. She was already inside my accounts. The only question left was, how far had she gotten? The bank branch was busy that Tuesday morning. I'd timed it that way. Wanted witnesses, wanted noise, wanted to blend into the crowd of people handling ordinary business on an ordinary day. But my daughter-in-law had other plans. She appeared at my elbow just as I was putting on my coat. "Where are you headed?" "Bang," I said simply. "Oh, perfect. I'll come with you. I need to deposit a check anyway." She was lying. I could tell by the way she grabbed her purse too quickly, by the way she didn't ask which bank or why I was going. She already knew. We drove in silence. Her car, her rules. I'd suggested taking mine, but she'd insisted. "Save on gas," she'd said brightly. What she meant was, maintain control. Inside the branch, she stayed close. Way too close. Her hand hovered near my elbow like I might topple over at any moment. The branch manager recognized me. "Mrs. Patterson, good to see you. What can we help you with today?" I opened my mouth to speak. "She needs to review her account structure," my daughter-in-law said, stepping forward. "We've been talking about simplifying things. She's been having trouble keeping track of everything." The manager's eyes flicked to me, polite but questioning. "Is that right, Mrs. Patterson?" "I'd like to review my statements," I said. "All accounts, especially the joint account." My daughter-in-law's smile didn't waver, but her voice gained an edge. "Mom, we just looked at those last week. Remember?" "I don't remember that. See?" She turned to the manager with an expression of patient concern. "This is exactly what I'm talking about." She forgets these conversations. It's been happening more and more. The manager looked uncomfortable now, caught between two versions of reality. "Why don't we all sit down?" he suggested, gesturing toward his desk. As we settled into chairs, my daughter-in-law launched into what I can only describe as a performance. She spoke about my episodes, about how I'd been leaving the stove on, about how I'd forgotten to pay bills, about how the family was so worried about me managing things on my own. None of it was true. All of it sounded plausible. The manager pulled up my accounts on his screen, and my daughter-in-law leaned forward, pointing at various transactions. "See, This is what I mean. These transfer she's doesn't remember making them. And these withdrawals, they're all over the place. No pattern, no consistency. I looked at the screen. She was right about one thing. The withdrawals were all over the place. Because I hadn't made them. I'd like to change the access permissions on this joint account, my daughter-in-law said smoothly. Maybe increase the transaction limits so I can help her more efficiently. Right now it's capped at $500 per transfer, which means when she needs help paying her bills, we have to do multiple transactions. It's confusing for her. The manager hesitated. Mrs. Patterson, for security purposes, I need your verbal authorization for any changes to account permissions. Do you approve increasing the transaction limits? The room went very quiet. My daughter-in-law's hand tightened on the armrest. No, I said clearly. I don't. Her head snapped toward me. Mom, I don't approve any changes. The manager nodded slowly. All right. Then the account stays as is. She doesn't understand what she's saying, my daughter-in-law said, her voice rising slightly. This is exactly the problem. She agrees to things and then forgets, or she refuses help because she doesn't realize she needs it. Ma'am, I understand your concern, the manager said carefully, but without Mrs. Patterson's verbal consent, I can't authorize changes to her accounts. I saw something flicker across my daughter-in-law's face, then, not anger exactly, something colder. Calculation. Of course, she said, forcing the smile back into place. I just want what's best for her. We left the bank in silence. She drove fast, her jaw tight. When we got home, she went straight to the kitchen without a word. I heard her on the phone, voice low and urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. I went to check the mail. That's when I found it. An envelope from the bank. Heavy paper. Official seal. Addressed to me. It had been opened. Not carefully steamed open or expertly resealed. Just torn along the top and shoved back into the pile of junk mail. Like whoever opened it assumed I wouldn't notice. Or wouldn't care. Or wouldn't remember. Inside was a notification about a change of address request for my bank statements. A request that had been submitted online 3 days ago. A request that had been flagged by the fraud department and denied pending my in-person verification. Someone had tried to redirect my mail. I stood there in the hallway, holding that torn envelope, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about control anymore. This was about erasing me. Making me invisible in my own life. Cutting off my access to information. Making sure I couldn't see what was being done in my name. I looked up and saw my daughter-in-law watching me from the kitchen doorway. What's that? She asked. Nothing, I said. Just junk mail. I walked past her to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed and opened the envelope again, reading every word. The request had been submitted using my email address. My password. From an IP address that wasn't mine. I added it to my folder. The folder that was getting thicker every day. Then I did something I'd been putting off. I called my son. Not when she was around. Not when she could listen. I waited until he left for work the next morning, and I called his cell phone. Mom, everything okay? I need to talk to you, I said. Alone. There was a pause. About what? About your wife. About what's been happening. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, I know she can be intense, but she's just trying to help. She opened my bank mail. What? She tried to change where my statements get sent. She tried to increase her access to my accounts without telling me. Mom? His voice had that tone now. That careful, gentle tone. Are you sure? Maybe you're misremembering, don't, I said sharply. Don't do that. Don't tell me I'm confused. Silence. I have proof, I said quietly. And I need you to decide something. Are you going to help me? Or are you going to pretend you don't see what she's doing? I'll talk to her, he said finally. But his voice told me everything I needed to know. He'd talked to her. He'd mentioned my concerns. And she'd explain them away with that patient smile and those concerned eyes. And he'd choose to believe her. Because believing me meant admitting something much worse. I hung up and sat in the silence of my room. The device was still behind my chair, still plugged in, still watching. And now I had a new question burning in my mind. If she was willing to go this far while I was alert and aware, what would she do if she convinced everyone I wasn't? The doctor's appointment was routine. Annual checkup. Blood pressure, cholesterol, the usual questions about how I'm feeling. I didn't mention I'd scheduled it myself. My daughter-in-law found out anyway. "I'll drive you," she announced at breakfast the morning of the appointment. "You shouldn't be driving before medical tests. What if your blood sugar is low?" My blood sugar had never been low in my life. But she was already gathering her things, already assuming I'd agree. And my son was nodding like this made perfect sense. In the car, she talked the entire way about how important it is to be honest with doctors, about how sometimes older people minimize symptoms because they don't want to seem weak, about how the doctor needs to know everything to help properly. "I'll come in with you," she said as we pulled into the hospital parking lot. "That way I can make sure nothing gets missed." "I don't need Mom." She put her hand over mine, her voice dropping to that concerned register. "I know you like your privacy. But at your age, you might forget important details. Let me help you." At your age? The receptionist checked me in, and we sat in the waiting room. My daughter-in-law pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. I watched her reflection in the dark screen of the television mounted on the wall. She was smiling. When the nurse called my name, my daughter-in-law stood up with me. "I'm fine to go alone," I said. "I know you are." Her voice was light, friendly, but her hand was already on my elbow, guiding me forward. "I'm just here for support." The nurse looked at me, then at her, then back at me. I could see the question in her eyes. I didn't answer it. We went into the examination room together. The nurse took my vitals: blood pressure, good, heart rate, normal, temperature, fine. Then she asked the standard questions. How was I sleeping? Any new medications? Any concerns? Before I could answer, my daughter-in-law spoke. "She's been having some memory issues," she said. "Nothing major, but we've noticed she forgets conversations. Sometimes she gets confused about what day it is." The nurse wrote something down. "Mrs. Patterson, have you noticed any memory changes?" "No," I said. "She wouldn't necessarily notice," my daughter-in-law interjected smoothly. "That's the thing with cognitive decline. The person experiencing it often doesn't recognize the symptoms." "Cognitive decline?" The nurse's expression shifted. More cautious now. More clinical. "She's also been having trouble sleeping," my daughter-in-law continued. "Up at odd hours. Sometimes we hear her talking to herself, and she's been more withdrawn lately. Less social." "I'm grieving," I said quietly. "My husband died 8 months ago." "Of course," my daughter-in-law said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "But grief can sometimes mask other issues, can't it? Especially in older adults." The nurse finished her notes and left to get the doctor. We sat in silence. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked. She looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes. "Doing what?" "I'm trying to help you, Mom. Someone has to make sure you're taken care of." Dr. Morrison came in, and the performance started again. My daughter-in-law listed symptoms I didn't have. Confusion I hadn't experienced. Moments of disorientation that never happened. She spoke with such conviction, such detail, that I could see the doctor taking her seriously. "Mrs. Patterson," Dr. Morrison asked gently, "how would you describe your mental state lately?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'm not confused. I'm not disoriented. I'm grieving, but I'm managing." "She says that," my daughter-in-law said sadly. "But we're seeing something different at home. Just yesterday she couldn't remember having a conversation we'd had that morning." "Because we didn't have that conversation," I said. Dr. Morrison made a note. I could see what she was thinking. Denial, lack of insight, classic signs. I'd like to run some cognitive screening tests, she said, just to establish a baseline. That's not necessary. Mom, please? My daughter-in-law's hand found mine again, squeezing with false comfort. It's just a precaution. If everything's fine, the tests will show that. You have nothing to worry about. But I had everything to worry about? Because once those tests were in my medical record, once there was documentation of concerns raised by family, it would become part of my permanent file, part of the narrative she was building. I took the tests. Mini mental state examination, clock drawing, word recall. I passed them all easily, but that didn't seem to matter as much as the fact that my daughter-in-law had raised concerns. Everything looks good cognitively, Dr. Morrison said, and I felt a flash of relief. But I want to see you back in 3 months for a follow-up. Sometimes these things develop gradually. These things. As we left, my daughter-in-law thanked the doctor profusely for being so thorough and so understanding of our concerns. In the car, she was quiet, not angry, just planning. I could practically hear the gears turning. That evening, I logged into my Medicare portal, something I'd done 100 times before, but this time, I checked the access history. My account had been accessed 4 days ago, at 2:30 in the afternoon, from an IP address that wasn't mine. Someone had looked at my medical records. Someone had seen my prescriptions, my diagnoses, my test results, everything. I took a screenshot, added it to my folder, and I realized something that made my hands shake. She wasn't just trying to make me look incompetent. She was building a medical case for it, documenting concerns, creating a paper trail, establishing a pattern. And if she could convince enough people, doctors, lawyers, my own son, that I was declining, that I needed help, that I couldn't manage my own affairs, then everything I owned, everything I'd built with my husband, everything I was, could be transferred into someone else's control. Someone who would act in my best interest. Someone who already had access to my home, my accounts, my medical information, my daily life. Someone who was watching me right now through that device behind my chair. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the wall, and asked myself the question I'd been avoiding. How far was she willing to go? And what would happen if I couldn't stop her in time? The phone call came on a Thursday morning. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from the flower bed my husband had planted our first year in this house. My phone rang from inside my cardigan pocket. Unknown number. Local area code. Mrs. Patterson. A woman's voice. Professional but warm. This is Jennifer Reese from Whitman and Associates. I'm calling regarding an urgent consultation request we received concerning your estate planning. I straightened up, dirt still under my fingernails. I didn't request a consultation. A pause. According to our records, we received a call on Monday from your daughter-in-law. She indicated you'd asked her to schedule an appointment to discuss power of attorney documents and medical directives. She mentioned some pressing health concerns. Health concerns. When is this appointment? I asked. Tomorrow afternoon? 2 o'clock. But Mrs. Patterson, our policy requires direct confirmation from the client for any estate-related consultations. That's why I'm calling. Did you authorize your daughter-in-law to schedule this on your behalf? No, I said. I didn't. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Would you like me to cancel the appointment? I looked back at the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see my daughter-in-law's silhouette moving around, putting away groceries, comfortable in my space. No, I said slowly. Keep it. But I'd like to come in today if possible. Alone. We have an opening at 4. I'll be there. I hung up and stared at the dirt under my nails, at the roses my husband had chosen because they matched my wedding bouquet, at the house that had been mine for 32 years. And I made a decision. I went inside, washed my hands, and told my daughter-in-law I had errands to run. What kind of errands? she asked, not looking up from her phone. Personal ones. Her eyes lifted then, sharp and assessing. Do you need company? No. Mom, you've been acting strange lately. Secretive. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Because if you're having trouble remembering things, or if you're feeling confused, you can tell me. That's what I'm here for. I picked up my purse and the manila folder I'd hidden in the hall closet. The folder she didn't know about. The one with the bank statements, the Medicare access logs, the torn envelope, the screenshot of the device. I'll be back before dinner, I said. I left before she could object. The law office was in an older building downtown, the kind with crown molding and hardwood floors that creaked. Jennifer Reese met me in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Thank you for seeing me on short notice, I said. Of course. Let's go to my office. She closed the door behind us, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Privacy. Tell me what's happening, she said, sitting across from me. So I did. I told her about the device. The bank statements, the mail, the medical appointment, the Medicare portal, the conversation she'd scheduled without my knowledge. I showed her the folder. She went through it slowly, methodically, her expression growing more serious with each page. Mrs. Patterson, she said finally, I need to be very direct with you. What you're describing is a pattern of financial and personal exploitation. It's more common than people realize, especially with older adults. I'm not saying you're incapable, she interrupted gently. I'm saying someone is trying to make you appear incapable. There's a difference. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. The good news is you're aware of what's happening, and you've been documenting it. That's crucial. The bad news is this kind of situation tends to escalate. Escalate how? Once someone commits to this course of action, they typically don't stop until they achieve their goal or they're forced to stop. Right now, your daughter-in-law has access to your home, partial access to your finances, and she's attempting to establish a medical narrative of cognitive decline. She tapped the Medicare screenshot. This unauthorized access to your medical records is illegal, by the way, as is the attempted mail redirection and the financial surveillance. What do? First, you do nothing. I must have looked confused because she smiled slightly. I know that sounds counterintuitive, she said, but the worst thing you can do right now is confront her directly. That will only make her accelerate her plans. What we need is for her to feel secure, to believe you're unaware, to continue documenting her own behavior. She leaned forward. Here's what I need you to do. Keep living normally. Don't remove that device from your room yet. Don't change your accounts. Don't tell anyone what you know, especially not your son. But I know he's your son. But right now, we don't know where his loyalty lies. And if he tells his wife, you're on to her, this whole thing gets much more complicated. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter-in-law. Where are you? You've been gone over an hour. Jennifer saw my face. She's tracking your time. She's tracking everything. Then we'll use that. Jennifer pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is my direct cell. Call me anytime, but be careful. Don't save my number under my real name. And don't delete these texts after we communicate. Why not? Because if this goes to court, we'll need proof of every conversation, every warning, every attempt you made to protect yourself. Court. The word hung between us like smoke. Do you think it'll come to that? I think, Jennifer said carefully, that your daughter-in-law scheduled an urgent estate consultation without your knowledge. That tells me she's moving into the end game. She wants power of attorney. She wants control of your medical decisions. And she wants it soon. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Getting worried. Please call. Tomorrow's appointment, I said. What do? You come. With her. Let her think everything is proceeding as planned. But you request to speak with me privately first. It's standard practice for estate planning, so she can't object without raising suspicion. And then we see how far she's willing to go. I left the office an hour later with a plan, or at least the beginning of one. Jennifer had given me instructions. What to say, what not to say, how to appear cooperative while revealing nothing. When I got home, my daughter-in-law was waiting in the kitchen. Where were you? Not angry? Concerned. Always concerned. Doctor's office, I lied. Needed to pick up a prescription? She relaxed slightly. You should have told me. I would have taken you. I know. I'm sorry. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Jennifer had said. Someone is trying to make you appear incapable. This kind of situation tends to escalate. We don't know where his loyalty lies. My phone lit up with a notification. An email from the attorney's office, confirming tomorrow's appointment. And then, 5 minutes later, I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Stopping outside my door. The soft sound of someone trying the handle. It was locked. I'd started locking it 3 days ago. The footsteps retreated, and I realized something that made my chest tighten. She was getting impatient. The question was, what would she do when patience ran out? The next afternoon, we drove to the attorney's office in silence. My daughter-in-law had dressed carefully. Professional, but approachable. She'd even brought a folder of her own, thick with papers I'd never seen. I organized everything, she said as we pulled into the parking lot. Medical records, bank statements, a list of your medications. It'll make the consultation go faster. Faster. That word again. Jennifer met us in the lobby. Her face remained perfectly neutral as she shook my daughter-in-law's hand. Thank you for scheduling this, my daughter-in-law said warmly. We've been so worried about getting Mom's affairs in order. At her age, you never know what might happen. Of course, Jennifer replied. Mrs. Patterson, before we begin, I'd like to speak with you privately. It's standard practice for estate consultations. We need to ensure we understand your wishes directly. My daughter-in-law's smile faltered. Oh, I can help explain things. Sometimes she gets confused about I understand. Jennifer interrupted smoothly. But our ethical guidelines require private consultation with the client first. It won't take long. We left my daughter-in-law in the waiting room, her folder clutched tight, her expression carefully neutral. In Jennifer's office, the door barely closed before she spoke. How are you holding up? She brought documents, medical records, that she obtained illegally. Jennifer pulled out her legal pad. Listen carefully. In a few minutes, she's going to come in here and present a very compelling case for why you need help. She'll have paperwork ready, power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, maybe even a trust modification. Can she do that? She can try. But here's what you need to understand. Any power of attorney requires your knowing consent. It has to be notarized. You have to understand what you're signing. Jennifer leaned forward. When she presents those documents, I'm going to ask you questions. Direct questions about whether you understand what you're signing and whether this is truly what you want. Answer honestly. Don't worry about hurting her feelings or causing a scene. And if she objects, then we'll know exactly how desperate she is. Jennifer opened her door and called my daughter-in-law in. She entered with her folder, spreading papers across the desk with practiced efficiency. I've prepared everything. The power of attorney gives me authority to manage her finances and medical decisions. It's really for her protection. Jennifer picked up one of the forms. This is a durable power of attorney with immediate effect. Mrs. Patterson, do you understand what this document means? Yes, I said. It means your daughter-in-law would have legal authority to access your accounts, make financial decisions, and control your medical care, even if you're fully capable of doing these things yourself. Is that what you want? My daughter-in-law shifted in her chair. We discussed this as a family. It's just a safety measure. I'm asking Mrs. Patterson, Jennifer said, her voice firm but professional. Is this what you want? The room went very quiet. No, I said. My daughter-in-law's face changed. Not angry, she was too smart for that. But something harder appeared behind her eyes. Mom, you're not understanding. We talked about this. You agreed this was the smart thing to do. When did we talk about this? I asked. Last week? In the kitchen? I explained everything. I don't remember that conversation. I watched her face light up with something like triumph. See? This is exactly why we need these protections. She doesn't remember. She's forgetting important discussions. Jennifer made a note. Mrs. Patterson, do you frequently forget conversations about important legal matters? No, I said clearly. Because that conversation never happened. She thinks it didn't happen, my daughter-in-law said quickly. But it did. This is the confusion we've been seeing. The doctor even noted concerns about her memory. The doctor noted concerns that you raised, I said. Not concerns that exist. My daughter-in-law turned to Jennifer. Is there a way we can proceed anyway? Given her obvious confusion? Maybe with my husband's co-signature? Jennifer's expression remained neutral. Not without Mrs. Patterson's informed consent. And right now, she's clearly stating she doesn't consent. But she's not capable of understanding. She seems quite capable to me, Jennifer interrupted. In fact, Mrs. Patterson has been very clear and consistent in her communication. My daughter-in-law gathered her papers, her movements sharp now. This is a mistake. She needs help whether she realizes it or not. Perhaps, Jennifer said. But that's not a determination that can be made in this office by family members with financial access to her accounts. The words hung in the air like a challenge. My daughter-in-law stood. We should go. Actually, Jennifer said, I'd like Mrs. Patterson to stay a bit longer. There are some protective measures I'd like to discuss with her. You're welcome to wait in the lobby. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. But she couldn't. Not without revealing exactly what she was. Fine, she said. I'll be outside. The door closed. Jennifer waited a beat, then pulled out a new form. I'm putting a note in your file documenting this interaction. Her attempt to rush these documents, her claims about your capacity, your clear refusal. Will that help? It establishes a timeline. It shows you're aware and protective of your rights. And it gives us leverage. For what? For whatever comes next. Jennifer's expression darkened. Because this won't end here. She's committed now. She tried to secure legal control and failed. That makes her more dangerous, not less. What do you think she'll do? I think she'll try to prove you're incompetent. Force the issue through medical channels or family pressure. But Mrs. Patterson, she fixed me with a serious look. I need you to promise me something. What? Don't sign anything. Don't agree to any new living arrangements. Don't let her convince you to go for a tour of assisted living facilities. And if she makes any move that feels urgent, you call me immediately. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter-in-law. Ready when you are? I looked at Jennifer. What if my son takes her side? Then you'll need to decide what matters. More keeping the peace, or keeping your autonomy. I thought about that drive home. About the locked door. About the device still hidden behind my chair. How do I stop her? You already have, Jennifer said. You didn't sign. You didn't cave. You stood your ground. Now we wait and see if she's smart enough to back down. But I already knew the answer to that. She wouldn't back down. She'd doubled down. And that's exactly what scared me. My daughter-in-law didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not in anger, in strategy. She was pleasant to my son, efficient around the house. But with me, there was a careful distance, like she was resetting the board. On Saturday, she announced we were having family dinner. Just us and your brother's family, she told my son at breakfast. Nothing fancy? I thought it would be nice for everyone to catch up. My son looked relieved. He'd been walking on eggshells since the attorney's office, caught between us but saying nothing. Great idea, he said. I knew better. They arrived at 6. My brother-in-law Tom, his wife Linda, their adult daughter Rachel, people I'd known for decades. People who loved me. People who would believe what they were told. Dinner started normally. Roast chicken, small talk, comfortable silence. Then my daughter-in-law brought out dessert and changed everything. I'm so glad everyone could come, she said, setting down the pie. I've been wanting to talk to you all about Mom. The table went quiet. She's been having some difficulties lately. Memory issues. Confusion. We took her to the doctor, and there are concerns. My brother-in-law looked at me. Is this true? No, I said. See, this is part of it, my daughter-in-law continued smoothly. She doesn't recognize the symptoms. Last Tuesday, she got up at 2 in the morning and was reorganizing the linen closet. When I asked her about it the next day, she didn't remember doing it. I stared at her. I was reading. In bed. With my door locked. That's what you think you were doing? She said gently. But I heard you in the hallway. I saw the closet the next morning. Everything moved around. She was lying. Completely, confidently lying. And she had details. The time, the closet, specific enough to sound true. I'm worried about her living alone, she continued. Well, not alone, she lives with us. But you know what I mean. She needs more supervision. Linda leaned forward. Have you considered assisted living? My aunt moved into a wonderful place last year. We've been researching options, my daughter-in-law said. Actually, there's a beautiful community about 20 minutes from here. We toured it last month. We didn't tour anything, I said. My daughter-in-law smiled sadly at the others. We drove past it. I pointed it out. She probably doesn't remember. Stop saying I don't remember things that never happened. Mom, my son's voice, quiet but firm. Please don't get upset. Don't get upset. As if my anger was proof of instability rather than a reasonable response to being gaslit in front of my own family. My daughter-in-law pulled out her phone. I've been keeping notes. Just small things I've noticed. Dates, times, behaviors. The doctor suggested it might be helpful. She scrolled through what looked like a detailed journal. March 15th, forgot she'd already had breakfast and made eggs twice. March 22nd, couldn't remember where she'd parked at the grocery store. April 3rd, left the stove burner on after making tea. None of it had happened. All of it sounded plausible. Rachel, my niece, looked at me with concern. Aunt Claire, are you feeling okay? Do you feel safe? I feel fine. And I'd feel safer if people stopped inventing symptoms I don't have. This is exactly what I'm talking about, my daughter-in-law said to the table. The defensiveness. The denial. It's textbook. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should talk about practical things. Finances, legal matters. Have you updated your will recently, Claire? My will is fine. But is everything in order? Power of attorney? Healthcare directives? If something happened, who would make decisions? I saw it then. The coordination? This wasn't a casual dinner conversation. This was an intervention. I'm not signing anything, I said. No one's asking you to sign anything tonight, my daughter-in-law said reasonably. We just want to make sure you're protected, that you're safe. That's all any of us want. She looked around the table, gathering support. I know this is hard to hear, but we all love her. And sometimes love means having difficult conversations. Linda nodded. Rachel looked sympathetic. Even Tom seemed convinced. Only my son looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate. There's a support group, my daughter-in-law continued, for families dealing with cognitive decline. I've been going. It's been really helpful. You've been going to a support group about my fake dementia? The words came out sharper than I intended. This is what I mean about the anger, she said to the others. It comes out of nowhere. Over nothing. I set down my fork carefully. I need some air. I walked out to the back porch before anyone could follow. Through the window, I watched my daughter-in-law lean in, speaking quietly to the others. Shaking her head, looking concerned, building consensus. My son came out 5 minutes later. "Mom, please come back inside, so I can be humiliated some more. She's trying to help you. She's lying. About all of it." He was quiet for a long moment. Why would she lie? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. "Mom?" He rubbed his face, tired. "What if you're wrong? What if there really is something happening and you just can't see it?" I looked at my son, my boy, now a man who believed his wife over his mother. "Then I guess we'll find out," I said. Inside, my daughter-in-law was showing everyone something on her phone. They were nodding, passing it around. When I came back in, she looked up with false brightness. "There you are. We were just looking at Heritage Gardens, the assisted living place. They have a lovely walking path and activities every day." "I'm not moving to assisted living." "Of course not," she said. "Not yet. But maybe just a tour, so you can see it's not scary." I said no. The table fell silent. Then Tom spoke. "Claire, honey, maybe just look at it. For peace of mind." Whose peace of mind? Mine or hers? My daughter-in-law stood and started clearing plates. "I think everyone's had a long day. Maybe we should call it a night." They left in a flurry of hugs and worried glances and whispered conversations by the door. When they were gone, my daughter-in-law turned to me. "That was embarrassing," she said quietly. "For you, it was a setup. It was family trying to help. But you made yourself look exactly like what we've been saying." She picked up her phone. "I got it all on recording, by the way. Your outburst. Your defensiveness. The doctor will want to hear it." She walked past me toward the stairs. "Oh, and Mom? I noticed you didn't eat much at dinner. You should really keep your strength up. At your age, skipping meals can affect your thinking." She knew I'd eaten. I'd been sitting right there. But tomorrow she'd tell the doctor I was refusing food. Another symptom for her list. I sat alone in the kitchen long after the lights went out upstairs, and I knew tomorrow I had to move faster. I woke up Monday with a plan. Small, simple, dangerous. Over breakfast, I mentioned casually that I'd been thinking about the house. My daughter-in-law looked up from her coffee. "What about it? Maybe selling? Moving somewhere smaller? This place is too much for me now." I watched her face carefully. She tried to hide it, but I saw the flash of interest. "That's a big decision," she said slowly. "Have you thought about what it's worth?" "Not really. Maybe 300,000? 300! She laughed. "Mom, this house is worth at least 550. Maybe more with the market right now." I blinked, playing confused. "Really? That much?" "Absolutely. The lot alone is worth 200. Plus the renovations Dad did, the location, the school district." My son had never mentioned any of this to her. I'd never mentioned it. The only way she'd know the exact value was if she'd looked it up, which meant she'd been planning this longer than I thought. "I had no idea," I said softly. "Maybe I should talk to a realtor." "I know someone," she said immediately. "Very trustworthy. I could set up a meeting. That would be helpful." She pulled out her phone right there, already texting. "How about Wednesday? I'll arrange everything." "Thank you, sweetheart." The word tasted like poison. That afternoon, my email pinged. An attachment from my daughter-in-law. Subject line, "For your review." I opened it. Power of attorney documents. Again, but different this time. This wasn't a request for general authority. This was specific. Authorization for real estate transactions. Permission to list, negotiate, and sell property on my behalf. The email was dated and timestamped. If I didn't respond, she could claim I'd received it and hadn't objected. If I did respond, she'd know I was onto her. I forwarded it to Jennifer without comment. She called 10 minutes later. Don't respond. Don't delete it. Save everything. She's moving on the house. I see that. This is good, actually. How is this good? Because she's getting sloppy. Sending legal documents via email without proper execution. Trying to establish authority she doesn't have. She's showing her hand. What do I do Wednesday? You go to the realtor meeting. You let her talk. You don't sign anything. And you text me the realtor's name the moment you have it. Wednesday arrived cold and gray. The realtor met us at a coffee shop downtown. Young guy, eager, with a tablet full of comps and market analysis. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter-in-law tells me you're thinking of selling. Just exploring options, I said. Smart. This is a seller's market. Your home, based on recent sales in your neighborhood, would list around $570, maybe $600 if we stage it right. My daughter-in-law nodded along like she already knew this. Now, the process is pretty straightforward, he continued. We'd need to get a few documents signed, listing agreement, disclosure forms. Your daughter-in-law mentioned she has power of attorney, so that simplifies things. She doesn't have power of attorney, I said clearly. He looked confused. Oh, I thought I can get it, my daughter-in-law interrupted smoothly. We're in the process of finalizing the paperwork. It'll be done before we list. I'm not giving her power of attorney, I said. The realtor's smile faded. He looked between us, sensing tension. Well, without proper authorization, we'd need Mrs. Patterson's signature on everything, he said carefully. That's fine, my daughter-in-law said. She sighed. Right, Mom? I haven't decided if I'm selling. But you said I was thinking about it. I didn't say I'd decided. Her jaw tightened. Can you give us a moment? She asked the realtor. He excused himself quickly, probably glad to escape. What are you doing? She hissed when he was gone. Exactly what I said. Thinking about it? You said you wanted to sell. No. I said maybe. You're the one who assumed. Something shifted in her expression. Calculation giving way to frustration. You know what I think? She said quietly. I think you're playing games. I think you know exactly what you're doing, and you're doing it to spite me. Why would I want to spite you? Because you've never liked me. From day one. I've tried so hard to help you, to take care of you, and you fight me at every turn. Help me. You've been documenting fake symptoms and telling people I'm incompetent. Because you are, she snapped. Then caught herself, smoothed her face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. It's just frustrating when you won't accept help. But I'd heard it. The mask slipping. The realtor came back, sensing the meeting was over. My daughter-in-law thanked him graciously and said we'd be in touch. In the car, silence. Then, that was embarrassing. For who? For both of us. He probably thinks we're dysfunctional, aren't we? She pulled into the driveway and turned to me. I'm trying to protect you. To protect this family, your assets, your future. If you won't do it yourself, someone has to. My assets aren't your concern. They are when you're making poor decisions. When you're confused and vulnerable and stop. I got out of the car. Just stop. That night, I got a notification from my bank. Someone had attempted to access my account again. Multiple failed password attempts. The timestamp, 9:47 p.m. I was in my room with the door locked. My daughter-in-law had been in the hallway. I'd heard her footsteps, heard her pause outside my door, heard the faint sound of typing. I screenshot the notification and sent it to Jennifer. Her response came immediately. She's panicking. Good. Keep your door locked. Call me if anything changes. I lay in bed that night, listening. Footsteps in the hall. The soft click of my doorknob being tested. Then voices downstairs. My son and my daughter-in-law arguing in whispers I couldn't quite make out. His voice rising. I don't know if hers. Sharp. We're too far in to stop now. Silence. Then my son, quieter. What if she's right? She's not. Trust me. More silence. Then footsteps going upstairs. I stared at the ceiling in the dark. Too far in to stop now? What did that mean? How far had they already gone? And what would happen when she realized I wasn't going to cooperate? Jennifer called the meeting for Thursday morning. Bring your son, she'd said. And tell your daughter-in-law it's about finalizing the estate documents she wanted. Make it sound cooperative. So I did. My daughter-in-law dressed carefully that morning. Professional, confident, like someone about to win. We sat in Jennifer's conference room, the three of us on one side of the table. Jennifer on the other with her legal pad and a file that seemed thicker than before. Thank you all for coming, Jennifer began. I wanted to discuss some concerns that have come up regarding Mrs. Patterson's estate planning and financial security. Finally, my daughter-in-law said, relieved. I'm glad we're moving forward with this. Jennifer's expression remained neutral. Before we proceed, I need to clarify a few things. Mrs. Patterson, you asked me to review the timeline of events over the past several months. Is that correct? Yes, I said. And you've provided documentation of various incidents. Would you like to present that now? I placed my folder on the table, the one I'd been building for weeks. My daughter-in-law leaned forward slightly. What incidents? I opened the folder. On March 28th, someone accessed my Medicare portal without my permission. I slid the screenshot across the table. The IP address doesn't match any device I own. My son picked it up, frowning. On April 2nd, someone attempted to redirect my bank statements to a different address. Another document? I never authorized this change. Mom, you probably just forgot my daughter-in-law started. On April 9th, someone accessed my bank account online using incorrect passwords. Multiple attempts. I laid out the bank notifications, dated and stamped. I was in my locked bedroom each time this happened. Jennifer spoke quietly. Mrs. Patterson also has documentation of a device found hidden in her bedroom, plugged into an outlet behind furniture, with a clear view of her living space. I placed the photo on the table. Dated, time-stamped. My son's face went pale. What is that? I was hoping your wife could tell us, I said. The room went silent. My daughter-in-law stared at the photo. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she laughed high and tight. That's ridiculous. Why would I put a camera in your room? That's exactly what I'd like to know. I didn't. This is paranoid, Mom. You're seeing things that aren't there, making connections that don't exist. This is exactly what we've been trying to tell everyone. You're not thinking clearly. Jennifer pulled out another document. Mrs. Patterson also has records of conversations and family dinners where you reported symptoms she never experienced, behaviors she never exhibited, creating a documented pattern of alleged cognitive decline. Because it's real, my daughter-in-law said, her voice rising. Ask anyone who's been around her. Ask the doctor. She's confused. She's forgetful. She needs help. The doctor found no evidence of cognitive impairment, Jennifer said calmly. Only concerns raised by you? Because she doesn't see it at home. I do. I'm with her every day. Watching me, I said. Through that device. I didn't put that there. Then who did? She looked at my son. Tell her she's being irrational. But my son was staring at the documents spread across the table. The bank alerts, the Medicare breach, the photo. Did you do this? He asked quietly. Of course not. She's making this up too. Did you access her medical records? Silence. Did you try to change where her mail goes? I was trying to help organize things. She was getting confused about, did you put a camera in her room? No. Her voice cracked slightly. I would never. This is insane. She's turning you against me with lies, and Jennifer interrupted. The unauthorized access to medical records is a federal crime under HIPAA. The attempted financial manipulation could constitute elder exploitation, and the surveillance, if proven, is illegal in this state without consent. My daughter-in-law stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, Jennifer said. You do? Because Mrs. Patterson has asked me to file a restraining order if necessary, and to report these incidents to Adult Protective Services. You can't, I can. And I will, if Mrs. Patterson requests it. My son finally spoke, his voice hollow. Why? His wife turned to him. Why what? Why would you do this? If you did. I didn't, don't. He held up the bank statements. I've seen you on your phone late at night. I've heard you talking about Mom's finances, her health, her house. I thought you were just worried. But this, ... he gestured at the table. This isn't worry. This is something else. She sat back down slowly, her face crumbling. You don't understand. I was trying to protect us. Protect our future. Our future. Your mother has assets. This house, her savings, her pension, and she's getting older, and I thought she stopped. I thought we should be prepared. Prepared by spying on her, by making her look incompetent, by making sure we wouldn't lose everything when she inevitably needs care. Do you know how much nursing homes cost? How fast they drain estates? I was thinking ahead. For us, for our future children. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jennifer made a note. So, you admit to accessing her private information and attempting to establish legal control of her assets. My daughter-in-law's face hardened. I admit to being practical. Someone had to be. At my expense, I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked at me. You're alone. Your husband is gone. You won't be here forever. What's wrong with making sure things are handled properly when the time comes? The time hasn't come, I said. I'm here. I'm capable. And you tried to take that away from me. My son stood. We should go. Sit down, his wife snapped. Don't let her manipulate you with, I said we're going. Jennifer cleared her throat. Before you leave, I need to inform you both that all accounts in Mrs. Patterson's name have been secured. The joint account has been closed. Access to medical records has been flagged. And the device found in her room has been documented as evidence should any legal action become necessary. My daughter-in-law's face went white. You can't do that. It's already done, I said. She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. My son stood there, looking between me and the door. I didn't know, he said finally. I swear, Mom, I didn't know it was this bad. But you knew something. He nodded, miserable. I knew she was ... intense. About planning. About security. But I thought she was just being responsible. She was trying to erase me. I know. His voice broke. I'm sorry. Jennifer stood. I'll give you two some privacy. When she left, my son sat back down heavily. What happens now? He asked. Now I take my life back, I said. And you decide if you're going to help me or help her. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I'll help you. Whatever you need. I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned something these past months. Trust isn't given. It's earned. And rebuilt slowly. Or not at all. The house felt different that night. Quieter, lighter. Like something heavy had finally been lifted off the walls. My daughter-in-law packed a bag and left within an hour of the meeting. My son drove her to her sister's place without a word to me. When he came back, his eyes were red, but he didn't want to talk about it. I didn't push. Jennifer called the next morning to finalize everything. The device had been removed and logged. The bank accounts were now solely in my name with new passwords and two-factor authentication. My medical records had been flagged for unauthorized access, and the Medicare office had opened an investigation. What about the house? I asked. It's yours. It's always been yours. And now there's a paper trail proving you're of sound mind and have been throughout this entire situation. And her. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. That depends on you. We have enough documentation for a restraining order. Possibly criminal charges for identity theft and elder exploitation. But it's your choice. I thought about that. About revenge versus peace. About punishment versus moving forward. No charges, I said. But I want the restraining order. I want legal distance. Consider it done. I spent the next week reorganizing my life, changed all my passwords, installed new locks, set up automatic alerts for every account. Jennifer helped me draft a new will with an independent executor. Everything documented. Everything secure. My son stayed in the house those first few days, sleeping in his old room, trying to figure out what came next. We didn't talk about her much. Mostly we just existed in the same space, relearning how to be around each other without her influence between us. One evening, he found me in the garden, pulling weeds. I should have seen it, he said, kneeling down beside me. All those comments about your memory, your confusion, I should have questioned it. She was convincing. She was lying. And I believed her over you. I sat back on my heels. You wanted to believe her. It was easier than thinking your wife was capable of this. He nodded, throat working. I keep thinking about all the times she'd come to bed and tell me what you'd done that day. Things you'd said, ways you'd acted, confused. I just accepted it. Like it was normal. It wasn't your fault. It was my job to protect you. And I failed. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. He stayed for 2 more weeks, helping me set up the new security system, updating my phone, making sure I felt safe. Then he found an apartment across town and started talking to a lawyer about divorce. I didn't tell him what to do. That was his choice to make, but I was grateful he was making it. 3 months later, I got a letter from my daughter-in-law's attorney. She was contesting the restraining order, claiming I'd fabricated evidence and manipulated the situation due to a related paranoia. Jennifer shut it down in one hearing with the documented timeline and the device photo. The judge wasn't amused. He extended the restraining order and ordered her to pay my legal fees. I never saw her again. My son came over for dinner every Sunday after that. We didn't talk about her unless necessary. Mostly we talked about normal things. His new job, the garden, plans to repaint the kitchen. Slowly, we rebuilt what she'd tried to destroy. One Sunday evening, as he was leaving, he paused at the door. How did you know? He asked. When to stay quiet and when to fight back. I thought about that. About all those weeks of pretending to be confused. Of documenting everything. Of waiting for the right moment. I didn't know, I said honestly. I just knew that screaming wouldn't work. She wanted me to look unstable, so I had to stay calm. She wanted me to seem paranoid, so I had to gather proof. She wanted me to be alone, so I found people who would listen. Jennifer, I agreed. And eventually, you. He hugged me then, long and tight. After he left, I walked through the house. My house. With my locks and my security and my peace. I went to my bedroom and sat in my husband's old reading chair. The outlet behind it was empty now. No device, no watching. Just an empty socket in a wall. I thought about everything that had happened. The violation, the gaslighting, the systematic attempt to erase my autonomy, and I thought about how close it had come to working. If I hadn't found that device when I did, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, if I hadn't stayed quiet long enough to gather proof, she would have won. I would have lost everything, not to death or disease, but to someone who decided I was worth more diminished than whole. The anger had faded over the months, replaced by something quieter. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance that some people see vulnerability as opportunity. that age is seen as weakness, that silence is mistaken for defeat. I'd proven all of that wrong. Not by being loud, not by being aggressive, but by being patient, strategic, smarter than she expected an old woman to be. I picked up my phone and opened my messages. A text from my brother-in-law checking in. One from Rachel asking about lunch next week. One from Jennifer sending an article about estate planning. People who saw me, not as a problem to be managed, but as a person worth protecting. I replied to each one, then set the phone down. The house was quiet around me. Safe, mine. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night without locking my door. Because I didn't need to anymore. The person I needed protection from was gone. And I was still here. Still capable. Still clear. Still standing. At 72 years old, I'd learned something my daughter-in-law never understood. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the only way to hear the truth. And patience isn't passivity. Sometimes it's the smartest weapon you have. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever lived through something like this, you're not alone.